Hi everybody, this is Pastor Rance coming to you today from Dry Gulch in Dakota Territory in the year 1850. Or maybe not. Actually, I'm right below my office at my home, and I had promised on my very first video that I would give you a tour of Dry Gulch, which is my hobby. It's a little bit bigger than stamp collecting. But as I show you this a little bit later on, I want you to understand I have a really good wife, because it was her idea that I build this, and not all women would want something like this built in their backyard. So before I do that though, my wife came to me yesterday and she said, "Honey, you need to lighten it up." She said, "You need to be on the video tomorrow and you need to do something funny." Well, folks, let me tell you, when I hear something funny, I laugh. But I'm not the kind of guy that can turn funny on and off at will. And by the way, sorry for wearing the dark glasses today, but my eyes are very light sensitive and we are outside. So I told my wife, well, okay, if I have to do something funny, I'm going to tell a story about you. And she said, whoa, wait a minute, I need to know what it is ahead of time. And I said, nope, sorry, this was your idea. You're just going to have to live with it. So the story I'm going to tell you today is a story of ultimate country romance. Now, going into this, I know that some of you ladies listening to this probably may not think this is very romantic. So I want you to know the story I'm going to tell you I had never done before, nor have I done since, but I did it for a specific purpose. So when Brandy and I first met, I was running a church and a very large missions organization. And Brandy came to volunteer time. And in the course of time, she liked what we were doing, and she became a full-time missionary working for the missions organization that I had founded. And in the course of time, she became my secretary. This, over a period of time, became my secretary. And we found out we had a lot in common, and we became very good friends. Eventually, we became very best friends, and then eventually fell in love and got married. But this was before the best friendship part. This was just that good friendship stage. So during those days, I was building this missionary organization and pastoring a little church that was mostly for missionary types, but and then going out in the evening and teaching in other people's churches. And during the day, however, I had to eat, and there wasn't a whole lot of money involved in missions at that time, nor is there now for that matter. And so I was shoeing horses. I have an extensive history of horsemanship and actually owned a couple of ranches and a bunch of horses. I had my first horse when I was about 12 years old. And so I was shoeing horses at the time during the day. So one day I went to Brandy, who, by the way, had come from an upper middle class, fairly well-to-do family. And I said, Brandy, how would you like to go out and go shoeing with me tomorrow? Of course, she wasn't going to do any work. And she said, sure, I'd be glad to see what you do. I'd really enjoy that, because she likes animals too. Well, she showed up at work the next morning to get my horseshoeing truck. And you have to understand that the shoes she had on doesn't look like they had ever stepped in dirt. I mean, they were totally white. White pants, white blouse, hair all fixed up, beautiful makeup on, just as cute as a pin. And in her tennis shoes, she had double ties, and it was pink ties wrapped around white ties. So I'm just telling you, we're talking about cute here. So we get in the truck, and it's all dusty and dirty, and she's blowing stuff off and doesn't really seem to care. And we get out to this ranch, and it is the middle of summertime. And so I'm talking about hot. I'm talking about 100 degrees plus. And into my third horse, I am dripping wet with sweat. I've got on a hat just like this one. I've got on a t-shirt that is just totally soaked in sweat. And of course, Levi's and boots, and my shoeing chaps. And I'm getting ready to start on this horse, and Brandy is standing maybe 15 feet away from the back end of this horse. And she just kind of standing there with her arms crossed and her feet spread a little bit. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm really getting interested in this lady. I'm starting to think, could this be a future for me? But I need to know. I already knew she was a serious Christian woman, but I needed to know if she was country. So she's standing about, like I said, about 10 feet away from me, standing here with her arms crossed and her feet spread just a little bit, got these perfect white clothes on. And I picked up the left hind foot of this horse, and I've got it in my lap on my chaps. And as I pick it up, I realized that this horse had just stepped in the biggest pile of green, mushy, very wet horse manure that you ever saw. And the entire shoe and the bottom of the foot was impacted with horse manure. Okay? So I'm thinking, I'm going to do something here that's either going to run her off from my life forever, or I'm going to find out if she's country. So I took my hand and I scooped out that whole big pile of wet, gooey horse manure, and I chucked it over right between her feet. So this is the part where I think you might not think it was romantic. Well, what my wife did, well, she wasn't my wife at the time, what she did was she kind of shook off that tennis shoe, and she kind of shook off this tennis shoe and started cracking up laughing. And I knew at that moment that I had found my country girl. Once again, I know you might not think it's romantic, but that's the way our kind of country relationship began, and it's been a whirlwind romance ever since. And by the way, I haven't thrown any kind of manure at her ever since. You can ask her. Okay? So we're going to take a little break right now, and I'm going to show you around Dry Gulch. Okay, folks, for our little tour, I know some of these areas are going to be shaded because we've got an awful lot of trees here. Over yonder is one of my best friends. Let's see, his name is, well, I can't remember what's his name exactly, but I'm sure you will. Anyway, I've got a John Wayne collection that I enjoy. And this is my stagecoach, and my horse, I mentioned one time before, he's a little hard-headed because he's made of steel. And over there is my rendition of a country church. That cross that you see up on the top came from Mexico City, and no telling how old it is. And panning back around on this side, everything's got a theme to it. I sure hope this isn't too dark for you to see, because this is my miner's cabin here. And it's the Gold Strike mine, and everything has got a theme. If you can see it, there's a shotgun hanging on the front door, and there's a girl's head in the window, supposed to be the daughter, and on the bottom of the shotgun it says, "You ain't courting my daughter." If any of you got 16-year-old daughters, you'll probably understand exactly. Now this wagon that we're looking at right here really is from an era of about 1850. The bottom chassis of it is anyway, and it is 2.5 times heavier than that steel stagecoach, and believe me, I know, because we carried these things in here. So panning around in this direction, I've got a lot of saddles, by the way, and tack and things of that nature. Panning around in this direction is where our technical supervisor, Kevin Witt, was taping a few minutes ago, so you see the microphone and all that set up there still. But this is Doña B's, Doña Brandy's cantina and barbecue area, and we use this for entertaining. On the right is the bottom floor of my office. Up on top is where I actually talk to you from, generally speaking, and that's my office up there. And inside the bottom floor is Brandy's jewelry showroom. She makes custom jewelry that she sells on the internet. So we're going to kind of come around in this direction a little bit. Sorry if this is a little bit shaky, but I had an area back here that I wanted to do something special with, and as I told you earlier, this is Brandy's idea. So this is my rendition of a country outhouse, and if any of you have ever had the displeasure of having to use an outhouse, you will understand exactly how distasteful that would be. So my outhouse has a twist that actually works. So it's not all that primeval here. Coming around in this direction is a side view of Doña B's, and then this is our Chinese laundry. So one day, Brandy was asking me, "Honey, what can I do to help you with Dry Gulch?" And I said, "Well, you could find a plastic butt for me." And she said, "I am not going to find a plastic butt for you." And I said, "Well, that's what I want." So sure enough, she found one on the internet, And that's what's inside those drawers there. And the female's drawers actually are from the early 1900s, and we found in an antique shop up in Northern California. This thing on the left and the back, if you can see it, is a hand crank vacuum cleaner that is marked 1912 on the back of it, and it actually still works. Our justice of the peace is Santiago. In Spanish, Santiago is James, so he is James Cook, the Honorable, all 3 foot tall of him, and he's the one that decides who hangs and who doesn't. So coming around in this direction, it's going to be kind of dark. I sure hope you can see it, but we have our own graveyard here. And in this graveyard, we have 2 occupants. We have on the left, here's my finger, on the left, we have Dangerous Dan McGraw. If you can see his boots sticking out of the ground, this is, after all, Boot Hill. And then next to him, we have Sweet Daisy May, got herself hitched to a bad hombre. Over here, we have my blacksmith shop, and all of the tools in here are original. They are very old. A lot of them I used myself when I was shoeing horses, but some of these things are from the 1800s. And then coming around in this direction, we have Cook's Livery Stable and Saddle and Tack. In reality, right now, it's a little workshop, but eventually I will build a horse-drawn fire cart out of steel. Over here, we have the Overland Stage and Freight. And I have one paying occupant, A. Shyster Esquire, attorney at law. Probably don't need to explain that one to you. And I have a sign on the front door that pretty well explains the way most country girls think. It says, "Don't flatter yourself, cowboy. I was looking at your horse." And then coming around in this direction, we have the Longhorn Saloon and the Riverboat Restaurant. All of these things are in various stages of completion. And I did forget one little thing, because I want to come back around here and I want to show you that we have our own country jail here. The sheriff is Scrap Iron Boggs, actually another pastor that I know, a good friend of mine. And then we have a guy over here that's really a dangerous dude by the name of Two Gun Chester. But the most dangerous guy of all, there is a notice down here of some people that are wanted, dead or alive, and the most dangerous one on the list is a guy by the name of Mile High Shilling. Dangerous guy, big reward. So coming down in this direction, you'll see a view of the ocean out here, and a platform that for people come take pictures. This steel obstacle that you can see with railroad ties is a place that I'm beginning a project to build a 16-foot long steam locomotive, vintage 1850, and I'll build it all out of steel, including the wheels. Over there, another project I'm working on will be the OK Corral, Earps 3, Clanton's 0, when I'm done with it. So, finishing our tour, we're going to go back to our stagecoach. There is a little bit more that you can see, but we're going to get too far away. So I want to walk you back over to the stagecoach, and I want to have my friend kind of hold the camera for me while I finish up. Well, folks, I hope that you enjoyed our little tour today. I tried to obey my wife and give you something a little more lighthearted. I'm sure that if you're a country boy or country girl, you'll enjoy my romantic story. If you come from the city, you might not. But I wanted to leave you with a little bit of hope today, because there's a lot of bad news out there in the world. And so when it's starting to get you down and you just can't stand watching news anymore, which I can't either sometimes, try to remember a promise for the future in Hebrews chapter 6, verses 17 through 20. And this is God speaking. It says, "Thus God, determining to show more abundantly to the heirs of his promise the immutability of his counsel, confirmed it by an oath, that by two immutable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we might have strong consolation who have fled for refuge to lay hold of the hope that is before us. This hope we have as an anchor of our souls, both sure and steadfast, and which enters the presence behind the veil. And when he's talking about this, he's talking about the veil in the heavenly temple, not the one on earth, where the forerunner has entered for us, even Jesus, having become high priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. So folks, have hope today. Things are going to get better, particularly if you're a believer in Christ, eventually. So this is Pastor Ant signing off today. I hope you enjoyed our time together, and please remember to look up my blog at Last Days Review at blogspot.com. Thank you. God bless you today. Bye.